Hello everyone, welcome to the Digital Academy's tutorial video on the technical website report. We may have generated a technical report on your website either as part of the consulting services that we provide or potentially as being part of your digital analyst certificate that you may be completing with us. This technical website report allows you to get a good feel for how well your website is performing based on the back end technical details, the structure, the coding, all of the things that you don't see when you visit your website. In many cases, when an organization gets a new website, a lot of it is not rebuilding the entire back end code, but a lot of the effort is typically invested in creating a more visually appealing user interface. Unfortunately, if you put a beautiful paint job on a website that's got a lot of challenges in the back end, then you're going to still have a poorly performing website, but you're going to have a nice looking, poorly performing website. Putting a paint job on a car that's got a broken down engine doesn't make the car perform any better. It just makes it look good while it's standing still. Your website and the performance of the back end of the website is important for a number of key dimensions because of the fact that when Google and Bing are looking at your website, they are looking at the back end code to see how efficient is the code, how accurate is the code, are there any errors or challenges in there. From a user perspective, any bad links or bad information, slow page load times, any challenges or issues like that will create potentially an unforgiving user experience that they then bail out and never ever come back to your website. When you're doing digital advertising, the quality of your landing page is an important part in determining the quality score of your ad campaign and the ultimate cost that you're going to need to pay and whether Google even shows your ads to your audience that's going on. So even though you may not be intimately involved in the website, the back-end coding, when you are creating social media content, doing digital advertising, optimizing your search engine placement, all of these elements have a huge impact based on the quality of the website and what's going on your back end. Because of that, it is really important that you have a good understanding about your website and the details. So let's take a look at some of the key things that you're going to find within your website report. So the web report that we've generated for you was created using a licensed software that we have called SortSite. This tool allows us to be able to put your website in, and it will then go and identify every technical error that exists on your website. Now, in many cases, the reports may not provide all of the errors if there's significant errors that are all around the same category or the same type. So they may have limits to the amount that they present. So you might not be able to set the record that we've ever had for a technical error website report, which was actually one organization that had a 23,000 page error report. So it was a pretty significant challenge as we go. So this error report is going to provide you with a very detailed checklist on what are the things that were working, what are the things that are not, and even establishing a priority for you for the sequencing for what you need to do to be able to fix the errors that you have on your website. One of the first things you're going to see on your website report is the issue report. This is really a summary of all of the elements of the site broken down by category to give you an idea on how challenged or how much of an opportunity is there for you to improve your website's performance. Now, when you're looking at this part of the report, one of the things that's important is to get a feel for how does this sort of perform? What are our main challenges? One way to sort of look at that is when you take a look at the overall quality section, the very first reporting part that tells you how many pages you had that had quality issues. Now, before you get a little bit concerned, like our website's not that big, when the software is looking at the number of pages, every unique URL, so a graphic, a visual, a file that you have, all of those things are going to represent unique pages and unique URLs that they're going to take a look at. One thing that you can do is to look at that overall quality number. And in this case, you're looking at an overall quality of 4,709 pages that have quality issues. The best way to get a feel for is that a good number or a bad number is to understand how that is as a percentage. Because if you've got a small website and you only have 10 pages, having issues on 10 of those pages is a pretty bad website. But on the other hand, if your website is 50,000 pages, having 10 errors is not a problem at all. So the first thing that you want to do is to take a look at that overall quality that says, in this case, 4,709 pages, and then take a look at the total number of pages that have been checked. In this case, 5,689. Although in a perfect world, you would have 0 pages that have quality issues, that's not likely going to be realistic. You're going to have some issues, you're going to have some challenges. A good target that we like to sort of recommend to organizations is if you can have the less than 10% or around that 10% mark of the total pages on your site having issues, then you're doing a pretty darn good job. So that's really a guide, a benchmark, a sort of a rubric that you can use to take a look at that overall quality issue and divide that by the total number of pages. And this will give you a clear indication of what percentage of your pages have challenges or issues, with 10% max being that goal that you want to achieve. Then what you see on this chart is the individual categories that we're going to take a look at in a few minutes in this presentation. The actual errors on your site, accessibility issues, compatibility issues, search issues, standards issues, and then usability. The other thing that you will notice is in the color coding, both here and later in the detailed report sections, you'll see some are in red and some are in orange or yellow, depending upon the color palette that you've got. Now, the red sections are ones that are no doubt, these are critical issues. These are challenges, these are problems, these are things that we want to consider. When you're dealing with other issues that are in the yellow section, these are ones that might be a concern. Now, for example, if we take a look, we see that in the compatibility section, there's an awful lot of compatibility issues that are in yellow. Because let's face it, if your website is not going to perform well on a BlackBerry version 2, but not a single person visiting your website in the last 2 years has used a BlackBerry with version 2, then it's not really a problem because it's not aligned with your visitors. However, if it's telling you that, you've got an issue with, Firefox, then if you've got a significant number of users that are using Firefox, that's going to be a challenge and one that you want to address. Likewise, for example, in the usability section, they may identify certain pages of having a very high level of education needed to comprehend the content on that page. Well, if that is your target audience, that's not really an issue because it's matched and aligned. If it's not your target audience, then it is definitely something that you want to address. So let's take a look at each of these sections in detail and give you a clear picture about what they're going to be addressing. The first one is your error section. This is probably the most important and most critical because this is where it's going to identify the quality issues on your website that are errors. Links being broken, servers not configured correctly, where you have significant technical issues that are located. Now, when we look at issues in any of the categories, you will see that this software breaks it down into priority 1, 2, and priority 3 issues. Priority 1 issues are going to be the ones that are going to be identified by a fully red dot that say these are the most critical, these are the most damaging, and these are the ones that you want to fix at your earliest convenience. It then tells you in this case that there's 10 different issues on 2,176 pages of the website. So here's where there's a fairly consistent challenge that is extended across multiple pages. Now, each issue is then going to be explained in detail. So in this case, it says that the link is broken, the Secure Socket Layer Certificate or SSL certificate on the target server has expired or is invalid. So what do you need to do? You need to check to make sure that it is truly an HTTPS website. And this report even goes so far as to say, here is the link, shows you what the www is, and even tells you what line of the code on that page of your website you are going to find that problem. So it gives you the exact location of where the problem is and where you need to go in order to fix it. So that's one of the reasons why your website report may be fairly extensive in length, because it details where to go to correct every single issue on that site. Priority 2 issues are going to be identified by a yellow or orange circle that is 3/4 full. So these are ones that are not as critical as your priority 1, but they are probably significant and should be addressed. So for example, in this case, it's identifying that the cascading style sheet properties are not supported by certain browsers. And then it will take a look at each of the individual browsers. In this case, when we're talking about Internet Explorer, that there is an issue on a particular page on line 84. Or for example, when we take a look at the title element being too long for Bing, where Bing recommends that the titles be no more than 65 characters long, it's going to identify, do you have issues? And so there's 2 issues. One is that title element that is a problem on 139 pages of the website. And it'll identify each and every page for you to be able to address that. When we look at priority 3 issues, these are ones that are still important, but perhaps less critical down the road. So for example, here's one where there's 2 issues on 34 different pages. And this is where not just is the title that we looked at in a more important priority, but the description is being too long for Bing and telling you what the length needs to be for that and how many characters there are. So in this case, the target is 160 characters, but the description on this particular page is actually 294 characters. And then it tells you where in the code on that web page do you find that particular information so you can adjust it. So it's a very detailed, very specific report that goes through priority 1, 2, and 3 issues. Those priorities are going to be common across all of the different sections. The first one being the error section. The next section deals with accessibility. Accessibility address potential problems that exist on your site, such as if there's individuals that have visual impairment, problems that might create challenges for older users, or other elements that you've got that are going to make things difficult for people to access the content. If they're using a screen reader, do you have the right data contained so that that screen reader is able to tell people audioly what is being presented on that screen? In this case, we've identified issues as a level A, which the accessibility ones consider critical for evaluation. So there's 27 issues on 3,961 pages. One of the issues is that a PDF that is available on that page does not have its metadata filled in, so screen readers are not going to be able to provide the right information for that. Compatibility is really looking and saying, how is your website going to perform for different browsers that people may be using? The red ones, the priority 1 issues, are going to identify some of those issues that are going to be fairly significant across many forms of commonly used browsers. When we move into lower priorities, these are going to be issues that may be specific to an older version of a particular browser, or a browser that is not necessarily one of the top ones being used. So being able to identify what are the issues, what do you need to do? So for example, it's identified that there are cases where there are SVG images that are being used on the website as opposed to PNG images. And SVG is a newer format that is not going to be readable and be displayed on older browsers. So in this case, it's identifying that if somebody is using an older version of Internet Explorer, less than or the same as version 8, they're not going to be able to view that data. Again, the red ones are ones that they identify as being problematic. The orange ones are going to be for perhaps versions of Internet Explorer that are really, really back there, that may or may not come up as being an issue. Search issues are sections that sort of identify whether you are violating search engine guidelines or your web pages are not complying with search engine best practices. So we see here that there's 3 issues on 190 pages that are priority 1. This is an example of in your URL, the words in your URL that you're using have underscores in and not dashes. Dashes are much more easy to identify the unique words that are contained and will perform better, particularly in Google searches, and that's why it's identified as a priority 1 issue. Standards are identifying, are there elements of what you're doing that are not in compliant with the W3C standards? The W3C standards are the World Wide Web Consortium. This is the organization globally that decides how should the internet work. What are the codes that you use to determine page width, height, color, scheme, all of those things. These are standardized standards that exist and are constantly in development. So if you've got issues on your website that are not in compliant with the W3 standards, the odds are that they are because you have old legacy code that was built to a previous standard and not updated. As an example here, where it talks about 37 unique issues on 2,481 pages. The first issue is the align attribute is obsolete. So it's identifying that that particular tool that's used to make sure that things are lined up correctly on a page is a tool that hasn't been used for quite some time, and that you need to update the coding and update how you're presenting that information. Finally, usability. Usability talks about some general issues such as navigation problems, Are you missing key things? So for example, there's 2 issues that are on 3,800 pages on this particular website, and this is where you need to have a link that is labeled home on every page of your website so that people can get back to where they started from. Now, a lot of websites will have a logo and that will link back to the home page, but not everybody is going to go, geez, I wonder if I click on this logo where it'll take me. So you need to have an actual link near the top of the page that says home, and that's where it gives you the explanation, gives you the details from the actual W3 standards, and a link to that to explain why this is going to be important so you can know why you need to fix it. So that's a breakdown of the individual sections of your detailed website report. It's important for you to take a look, see where the concerns are, see what the challenges are. Some of these fixes are going to be quite easy, such as adjusting your metadata, whether it's your title or your description length. Some of them may be also easy, such as upgrading the types of images that you're using. Others may be more challenging and involve adjustments to the actual coding, such as your align or using cascading style sheets. So have a good look at the report. If you do have any questions on that report, please make sure that you reach out to me or connect with us on any of our social media channels, and we'll be happy to address any questions that you may have. All right. Thanks very much, everybody, and have yourselves a great day. And if you have any questions, please let me know.